Time to shine today, podcast varsity squad. This is Scott Ferguson, and I got me a veteran, albeit Air Force. No, I'm kidding. No, he's just awesome, man. He's did the deed. Someone that I immensely respect. He has his feet in different things to help build wealth for himself and most importantly his family. To build, he's the main person, the main generation wealth here, and his name is Dom. He allows me to call him Slice. It's his call sign, but Dom Slice Teich, and he brings his fighter pilot background and applies them to guide goal-oriented individuals with techniques that American fighter pilots use to ensure mission success. High-output individuals struggle with information overload, so he created the largest online group of fighter pilots to guide action takers in short, impactful steps. And don't go there yet, squad, but his website with his fighter pilots that he has with his team, these people are studs, and they're out there doing the deed and getting it done and then passing down the info to you, because you know what I did in other podcasts. I'm not even doing what I did in the military, but these guys are flying thousands of feet above the air doing the deed, and just what it does is incredible. And if you're watching on Vimeo or YouTube and you see Dom, and like, he's a handsome dude, but he's a fighter pilot, and most of the fighter pilots you see don't keep their physical stature as Dom does because of all the G's and stuff they're pulling in. I'm just so blessed to have Dom on. And Dom, if you don't mind, please introduce yourself to Time to Shine Today podcast varsity squad. But first, what's your favorite color and why?
My favorite color, I would have to say, is, I don't really have a favorite, but I would say it would, if there was one, it'd probably be orange.
Orange, really?
Yeah.
All right. Orange is actually the fun color. I always ask that because I can get a feel for usually when people say, their color, I can kind of get a feel for them. If they're red, they're usually fiery. Blue, they're kind of chill. But I can see orange with you, brother. Let's in your color, will you, handsome devil? Come on now.
Well, the awesome. Orange, I restored a 1966 Volkswagen Squareback when I was 16.
Really?
Built the motor. This thing was bad to the bone. I lowered it. It was like a little rat rod kind of thing, California style. Wagon, this old school.
Yeah, the square. Yeah.
Sweet,
I remember those.
I mean, it was stripped it down, and this thing was bad to the bone. I painted it bright orange, and it was just. I mean, I ended up selling it eventually, but it was so funny to see people like look at it because it was small, like an old school Mini Cooper style size.
Right.
And so I would climb into this thing and I'd fire it up, and what they didn't know is that it had about 50 to 60% more power than the stock.
Really?
And so it would burn. You could just light the tires up in first and second gear.
Right.
And to see somebody watching that, just see this little car and then just burn out and just take off.
Are those engines in the back?
The engine was in the back.
Yeah. That's awesome, dude. That's awesome. So, Dom, seriously, man, thank you for coming on. But let's get to the origins, maybe pre-military, kind of like what you kind of did a little growing up, what got you into the military, and how you're using that mindset to help others level up. And thank you for doing that, brother. Not only are you serving the country, but you're serving people in a niche where it's very much needed, bro. So let's get to the origins.
Yeah, I think something that is probably important for everybody listening to this to know is that, maybe a year ago I was talking to my old man, and he said, when you were a little kid, I did not ever envision you being a fighter pilot. And so if I wasn't at this age, I probably would have taken that the wrong way. But I think the important thing to know about that is that, having a plastic brain, you can learn a lot of this stuff. And so, and it's applicable to all different types of life, right? So that, the single seat mindset is just pilots that sit in the airplane by themselves. And it's not a selfish thing to do. It's, we're working as a team. However, as a kid, and then, growing up and now getting to where I am now, I wasn't the guy that came down the conveyor belt and God was like, dude, you're going to be a fighter pilot.
Right.
I didn't grow up that way. I was more of a quiet, reserved kid. I loved playing sports. So I played baseball 5 to 7 days a week. I was a downhill ski instructor, snow ski instructor at 14.
Where'd you grow up, Dom?
Spokane.
Okay.
Washington.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I feel you. Okay.
Yeah. So just out in the, and Dad, eventually we moved a few times when we were little, but then he moved us out into the country on a big chunk of land. And so we had trees and forts and guns and, fires and just stuff that is so many kids don't get to do.
Right.
So that really was awesome. And then we were on the extended, probably 20 to 30 mile center line for Fairchild Air Force Base back when it was a SAC base. So they had B-52 bombers there. And so if we were out in the fields or driving our three-wheelers or just doing stuff we shouldn't have been doing, a B-52 would fly over us, and it looked as if you could just reach up and touch it because it
Right.
was so big.
Yeah.
And then we had Phelps Field, which was a little civilian airfield there close. So we saw, I mean, farmers would be flying ultralights. There would be the B-52 bombers coming in, and then there would be all these civilian airplanes just flying around when the weather was good. And
Mm,
so I just always had that itch to fly airplanes,
right.
to work on them, to do anything to be around airplanes. That's where it started out.
That's awesome, man. And like it almost was subconsciously bred into you when you're feeling that power flying over you. But I have to ask you, let's unpack, not only unpack, but what do you mean by plastic brain?
Yeah, so I think having a plastic brain, meaning it's moldable,
Oh,
meaning you
elastic.
can,
Okay, gotcha.
yeah, you can
Love it.
elastic, plastic. It's call it clay. You can
Sure.
retweak your brain, right? Quite a bit
Yeah.
actually. And I've heard some of your backstory, but I also have a pretty big crash and burn story. After being in the Air Force for 12 years or so, I had a huge crash, mental crash. We can get to that later, but the
Sure.
the thing that I'm getting at is as you learn, right? I wasn't born as a fighter pilot, right? So I
Hmm.
learned how to do that, and that's what
Right.
pilot training is for. That's what you know. Somebody doesn't step into the batter's box and hit a fastball thrown by Randy Johnson. It just doesn't
Right.
happen. You have to
Right.
learn that, right? So I think that's the important thing to know is if you're listening to this and you're maybe struggling a little bit, there are little things out there that can, if you say I can, or if you say, I don't know how to do that, but I wanna look at it. Robert Kiyosaki, when you talk about real estate, he goes that what he learned from his rich dad was his rich dad said, it's not that no, I can't do that. It's
Hmm.
how do
How
I do
can I?
that?
Yeah, man.
How can I do
Absolutely.
that? Right. So that opens up a world of possibilities, right? Just literally giving yourself that permission, not putting a roadblock in front of yourself.
I love
And you just
that.
go, well, how? How do I do that? And then
Right.
just take that next step.
Yeah. As long as it all aligns with your why, you're
Yeah.
doing something, the how kind of comes along. But like you said, if you have a plastic brain and elastic, it can wrap itself around new things, especially if you're passionate about it with that why. That's awesome, Dom. So
Yeah.
take us into, like, I mean, you were in the military. Is there any story or something that you can actually share with us that was that the squad out there? I know that's pretty exciting. Some maybe you overcame while you're in the air.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think one of my most memorable flights was on my second deployment. We're over Syria, right? And so this is circa probably 2015, 2016
Mhm.
timeframe.
Okay.
Lots of offensive things going on the ground.
Mhm.
Lots of terrorist groups, lots of stuff going on, right? And whether or not you're pro-war, anti-war, that's not the point. But I'm a fighter pilot. I think you can be a just soldier in an unjust war, right? So
Mm.
you can be a good person serving for the right reasons, and then maybe policies or the military goes the wrong way. So that's not what we're talking about here. It's more, hey, I'm here in the single seat fighter jet. I'm flying with the squadron commander. He's my wingman, actually. He's a Top Gun instructor pilot. So I'm just leading us around. We're
Right.
doing our job in our single seat fighter jets. It's at night, so it's probably, I don't know, 1 in the morning. So
Mhm.
completely black, and a sandstorm goes across the entire Middle East. I mean, it starts to cover all of Syria, all of Iraq, all of Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and we've been airborne for probably about 6 hours, going back and forth to the tanker, working with some groups on the ground, and as I'm transiting all the way across Syria, all the way through Iraq, and we're like heading back to our base, I get on the satellite radio, and the guy sitting at the desk, it just basically he says, "Go away," and that's not something I've ever heard before. Um, but
Uh,
what it got to was there's no way we were going to land because
that
there was no
sandstorm.
visibility at the airport.
Yeah.
So I had already, unfortunately, cleared off the tanker. So we had
Right.
gotten some gas, and now we're several countries away from a landing surface. And so, I mean, praise God. And literally, by the grace of God, we were able to get back in touch with the tanker. They turned around, they picked us back
Wow.
up again, and then they drug us across several countries. And it was actually on my birthday. And I'm not a big birthday guy, but that's why I
Mhm.
remember it. I landed at a base in Turkey on my birthday after being airborne for, I don't know, like 8 or 9 hours. And it was raining,
Yeah.
and the visibility was low, and we got the jets on the ground. And I just remember being at the end of the runway, getting de-armed, and the crews came out to help us out. And just, the platitude of, I would rather be on the ground wishing I was in the air versus in the air wishing I was on the ground. And
Right.
that was just a very memorable flight
Yeah.
for many different reasons. And I was just super grateful to have diverted and made it. We were safe.
Yeah.
And that was the first night in probably 4 or 5 months where I actually had a shower in my own room, because you've been deployed too, right?
Yeah.
Just
Absolutely.
there's the things in life that you take for granted, especially as an
Yeah.
American citizen.
Oh yeah.
um, Electricity, water, your
Toilet
own
paper,
room,
all that stuff, dude.
right? All
Yeah.
of that stuff, right? And I just remember sitting there and then going to my room, and I took a like a 1 hour shower,
Right.
which is a mortal sin if you're
Sure.
deployed.
Right.
Um, but that was just something that was very memorable. I had an alcoholic beverage, which is also
Yeah.
very welcomed,
Sure.
and settled in, and probably got one of the best nights of sleep I had gotten in a long time.
Wow. And was your wingman, who was the Top Gun instructor, did he give you some kudos on how you handled it? And did he keep you in the lead during the time?
Yeah, I was the lead the whole time.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, and he was our squadron commander too, and I think he did a really good job as a squadron commander. And then this was not intentional, but it just reminded me in Single Seat Wisdom Volume 1, that book,
Sure.
there's 20 chapters in it. They're all written by a different fighter pilot. He wrote a chapter in that book, and it's Jeff Cohen, goes by Tuck, and
Okay.
he talked about breaking rules.
Okay.
And that's a tough thing to hear from a guy who's a Top Gun instructor pilot. And as a fighter pilot, you follow the rules, but then there are times in war, there are times outside of training where you actually have to break the rules sometimes to make things happen. So that's part of growing up and like learning where the left right bounds of life are, and then you have to make choices through your life. Like, this is a time where I'm going to break that rule. And there are some unbreakable rules, right? But
Sure.
there are times where there are rules, and I'm not going to spoil his story because I'll send you the
No.
book. And you
Yeah,
can
no, I
read it.
appreciate it. Can't wait. And it's a
Yeah.
under tuck. That's awesome. And so when you're being a fighter pilot and you'll have, say, a new pilot that comes in, and maybe you're kind of mentoring them and whatnot.
Yeah.
What do you see in the newer pilots? Maybe their biggest blind spots.
Sure.
It might not even have to be about being a pilot. It could be about their life, their lifestyle. What do you find is the biggest kind of blind spot in your world? Because not many of us, man, live that. You know what I'm saying? So, like, what do you find their blind spots to be?
So, I mean, I'll caveat what I'm about to say with, obviously it's a very subjective comment about what
Mhm.
I'm about to say, right? Because I'm gonna leverage my past
Sure.
and kind of how I view the students. And you hit the nail on the nugget. It's not necessarily about flying. It's
Hmm.
about the officer, the pilot, the person behind who is flying, right? So
Right.
it's a lot of times less about how good of a pilot you are, because the attitude goes a long way. And we had, at this time, we had some students that were struggling in the class that just graduated. And having been around a minute, I get put on their letters to fly with them, so that they have a little bit more experience behind them to kind of make sure that we're training them the right way.
Right.
And
Right.
this pilot, I remember talking to him, and I said, dude, one of your biggest strengths is your attitude. And I looked at him. I was like, dude, you have such a great attitude that you're gonna probably graduate. I was like, if you had a bad attitude, I would be willing to bet that you would wash out very quickly.
Right.
But your attitude is bar none in the top 3 students I've ever flown with. And I've been teaching people how to fly for over 20 years now. And
Right.
I was like, dude, your attitude is what is I'm like, dude, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm very subjective when I fly with you, and my objectivity kind of starts to slide away because you're such a good dude and I want to help you so much, right? And so
Right.
it's that underdog that is also getting beat down every single day,
Yeah.
and it's not fun a lot of times, but then he stands up and he smiles and he's like, I flew with him at
Yeah.
night, I don't know, a month or two ago, and he struggled. There were some things that definitely did not go well.
Hmm.
And he comes back and he was just like, dude, that was so badass. And he knows that he jacked up things. He knew that he
Right.
had these little missteps. And so I think, getting back to your question,
Yeah.
the thing that I see the most is probably my biggest fault when I started out, which was my whole life, starting at 16, I started flying airplanes.
Right.
And a lot of my success came from individual grit. Just, if somebody, especially if somebody told me that I couldn't do that, that empowered me even more. In fact, when I went through officer training school, my flight commander had washed out of pilot training, and during officer training school, he said that I would most likely wash out of pilot training. This is not what you want to tell a kid that you're
No.
trying to build up. That only empowered me more. Scott, I graduated. I was the top graduate. I was the distinguished graduate. I took the
Yeah.
flying training awards. I took the flight commander award. I just blew everything out. Out of about 60 students, out of 2 classes, I was the top graduate
Right.
from pilot training. And so the reason I say that is not to toot my own horn,
No.
even though that is something that is, I'm maybe proud is the wrong word, but I'm very, I was happy. Like, I
Yeah.
was like, I did it. The
Yeah. You
problem
feel
that I
accomplished. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Sure.
was accomplished. I had set my mind to all this stuff, and then I did it. And so then the problem that I experienced through that was that for so many years I had been focusing on being that person, and it kind of moved me into more of a selfish mindset.
Right.
And so, not that I wasn't a team player, but I could have been a much better team player at times. And I was
Oh,
fired. I mean, I'm Irish, Catholic,
yeah.
and holy cow. I mean, a lot of people put up with me because I was such a workhorse.
Right.
You know,
They
I was
see
willing to
it.
yeah, I was willing to outwork anybody all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it.
So,
Then they see that and it plays off and it trickles down. So maybe if a new pilot or somebody, maybe even in life, they kind of come up to you and they see the wisdom that you have. They see the experience that you have. Is there any good question that you wish they would ask you but never do?
well, so a lot of times you can see it, right?
Okay.
And so, and I can, now doing it enough, I can kind of sense when somebody is not quite towing the line and pushing as hard as they can.
Sure.
And I think as a coach, right? Because people want a mentor or a coach. Potentially, maybe they don't. I'd say a lot of fighter pilots, including myself, I didn't know that I needed that or even wanted it.
Right.
But those individuals will approach you and just go, "Hey, dude, I see this in you. I see that you're a more or less a workaholic." When I started out,
Right.
and these young fighter pilots, as they're growing up, it's just a matter of reminding them of the bigger picture. This is not a you-centered program anymore. And unfortunately, when they're going through undergraduate pilot training, before they even get to us for F-16 for fighter pilot training, it's very much a individual training program, in a
Right.
sense, where
Yeah.
you need to pass your own tests, you need to pass your own flights. And granted, there's some flight classroom stuff that you do, take the trash out, help your dudes, like help other people study if you can. But largely when they get to us, it's not a washout program. We want them to succeed.
Right.
And the thing that I tell the classes, because I am the guy that reaches out to all the students before they even get to our base. I
Mhm.
work with their syllabus and their training. I'm the flying course manager, and then I work with them all the way through their program, all the way until after they're graduated. And what I tell them the day one of the big things I say, that the success, your individual success will largely be dependent on how well your class works together. Because the more your class is having fun, the more that you're working together as a class, the more fun you'll have, because then the instructor pilots will see that you're having fun.
Yeah.
And when the students are having fun and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you're going to fly better. And when you
Love
fly
it.
better, you get better grades. The whole
Yeah.
class will rise up. And so as a group, you're really going to change that dynamic.
Love it.
And I think a lot of them maybe haven't heard that when they get here, because it's very much I need to pass this test. I need
Yeah,
to pass
dude.
my next flight,
Right.
which is important, very important. But
Right.
there's also a level of, man, if your class is gelled together as a team,
Bro. Yeah.
super helpful.
Love it. So, Dom, let me ask something have you seen the movie Back to the Future?
Yeah.
Okay, let's get in that DeLorean with Marty McFly, man. Let's go back to the Double Deuce. I know how old you are. I'm not going to say it, but I know how old you are. The Double Deuce, a 22-year-old, Dom. What kind of knowledge nuggets? This is what we call him here, Time Shine today. What kind of knowledge nuggets might you drop on him to maybe not change anything? Because you've lived, according to a lot of people, a rock star life. Okay, doing what you do, but to maybe shorten a learning curve or level up, maybe just a little bit quicker. What might you drop on him in knowledge?
Okay, so the 22-year-old version of me, extreme workaholic, unmarried, no kids, would literally willing to outwork anybody. I'll
Sure.
stay up all hours.
Yeah, you said that, right? Yeah.
Right. So that's the person you're talking to,
Mm-hmm.
and with that type of person, I think the knowledge nugget that I would have needed from somebody was, unfortunately, I discounted a lot of people when I was young because I was told so many times that I couldn't do things. So if somebody told me that I couldn't do something, the first question in my mind that I would ask myself is, did you do it? So if somebody that was a non-fighter pilot told me I couldn't do something, I immediately discounted them as knowledgeable or credible, mostly because they hadn't even done it. So I go, how
Right.
do you know that I can't do that? So I think it would be important to know, and that could be a good character trait, right? Just knowing who's talking to you and being able to go, dude, are you encouraging me or are you dissuading me? And then what's your background? So don't take advice from anybody. Be picky with your advice.
Yeah.
Be a little less brash like I was.
Right.
Accept that and hear that. But then when somebody did talk to me, the advice that came through the clearest was not advice that you should do this. That immediately turned me off because I'm like, dude, you're not me. So the best advice that somebody would tell me, or a coach, is like, hey, here are some options, and dude, it is up to you. And just going, dude, this is going to be really difficult to make happen, but I think here are some of your strengths, and here's the door. And you know what, dude, maybe don't do it because it's going to be really difficult. And like, if somebody told me that, like the fighter pilots that I ran into when I was getting my undergrad,
Sure.
Harley Davidson was one of the retired fighter pilots, and I was like, I was flying civilian airplanes at the time, and I just remember skittishly walking up to him because I was like, oh, he's a fighter pilot, he's probably not gonna want to talk to me. And he's like, hey, what's up? And I was like, I want to be a fighter pilot. I'm doing all this stuff. I'm getting an aviation degree. I'm flying airplanes, doing all this stuff. And he looks down at me, and he's just like, and I was like, how do I do the fitter pilot thing? I want to do that. I don't even know where to start. There's no pilots in my family. Nobody's in the military. Like, I don't even know where to go. He's like, you just remember him looking at me, and he goes, hell, kid, I did it. You can do it. And that was just permission, from a guy. And you just never know when you're going to drop that little nugget on somebody as a guide when you've been there, done
because they did it. So you can't discount that. That's awesome.
Hearing that, and just gave me permission
to
take the next step.
Love it, man. So, Dom, how do you want your dash remembered then? That little line in between your incarnation date and your expiration date, your life date and death date. Hopefully it's way down the road. But with as much as you're helping people now, the single seat wisdom and whatnot, how do you want your dash remembered?
Say that question again. How do I want my what?
Dash, that little line on your tombstone. You have your life date and your death date. How do you want your dash remembered?
So now, at this age, something along the lines of like man of God, or
love it.
Yeah.
All right. So I got to ask you this then. What do you think people misunderstand the most about you?
I think a lot of the people that haven't bumped into me over the years probably don't know that about 2.5 years ago, I went through, well, it started about 5 years ago, went through a major mental crash. And what it led me back to was, so the reason I said man of God, just the backstory to that is I was a Christian in name, but I wasn't living that life.
Sure. A lot of us are. But yeah, I feel you.
In our culture too, it's you know, you want to talk mind, body, spirit. I'm sure there's more aspects to the
Absolutely.
human, of course, but the spiritual aspects, and I'm not talking free floating spirituality. I'm talking about guided spirituality, and more specifically Christian spirituality,
Mm-hmm.
that I undervalued. And so I'm a prideful person, not super humble. I'm trying to work on that. And I remember walking out of church one day with my wife, and I said, obviously not great to say on church grounds, but I looked at my wife and I was like, this is all bullshit.
Right.
I was like, I'm going to prove that this, like, I'm going to start poking holes in this. And as I started digging and doing year-long Bible studies, and that was just the hook. That was God's hook. Like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
you prideful jerk. Like,
Yeah, buddy.
pulled me in.
Yeah.
And I couldn't prove any of it wrong. And it's like, I still, like, you watch shows like The Chosen, or, and it really humanizes who Jesus was. And,
Sure.
and he's just a dude. I mean, he grew up
Right.
in austere conditions, walked around in sandals.
Worked with wood, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Carpenter, he's probably jacked. He wasn't like this.
I know. He's
dude.
probably like,
No.
"Rah." Right.
Dude, he would walk from what, like the Sea of Galilee all the way down to Jericho. And
Sure.
another thing, on one of my deployments, I've been able to go through the Holy Land.
Me too, brother. Yeah.
And stand on Mount Nebo, where like Moses looked over across, the river there that Jesus would cross. And it's like, hey, you don't walk 100 miles and you're not like strong.
Right.
And so I think there's a lot of that's misled, and in our country as a whole, and specifically for me at every individual level.
Right.
Where things really changed in my life is where I then had that reversion back to a Christian life. And
love it, man.
That.
Right.
And that is something that a lot of people are not really super pumped to talk about.
Sure.
But that changed everything. That changed my business. It changed what I was doing every day. I was very busy. I was one of those guys that did a lot of things. It was busyness, but I wasn't in the right business.
Right.
I shut a business off that made money, but it wasn't serving the bigger why, like you talked about.
Love that. That's
Christianity. That spirituality, the calm in the morning of just getting your mind right for call it 5 minutes for freedom. You can whatever.
Yeah.
5 minutes in the morning, just lay there. You can whatever, but get your mind right. What am I doing today?
Yeah. Is it lining with my why? 100%.
Gratitude. Thank you, God, for another day.
Yeah. Each one of my coaching clients, I don't care if you're playing Major League Baseball, if you're, a housewife at home, they have got to send me a gratitude sandwich 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. I treat it like a workout, right? And the sandwich is set up where, you have your intentions of the day, your big win from yesterday, who you want to send good vibes to, and then what you're concerned about, right? And then then you have to list 14 things you're grateful for. And then it just squeezes, that sandwich just squeezes out the concern. So if you set your intention, send some love, and then what you're worried about, and then 14 you just can't. Your gratitude is where it starts. And I love that. So got to keep this moving a little bit. And squad, we're going to take my good friend, a fellow veteran and kick-ass fighter pilot, Dom, through our leveling up lightning round, just as soon as we get back from thanking our sponsors and affiliates. Time to shine today, podcast Varsity Squad. We are back, and Dom, when I'm out in Phoenix this summer, I'm going to try to definitely hook up with you. And some of these questions we might talk about and have a couple brain grenades if you would enjoy a beer or just a tea or something, and talk about some of these. But you get 5 seconds today with no explanations. They can all be answered that way. You ready to level up?
Let's do it.
Here we go. He's on his hands on the throttle. I love it, man. Dom, what is the best leveling up advice you've ever received?
Be a better Christian.
Love it. Share one of your personal habits that contributes to your success.
5 minutes of freedom every morning.
That's awesome.
Establish your intention every day.
Beautiful. So you see me walking down the street. So other than your book or even the good book, the Bible, you see Fergie, man, he looks like he's in the doldrums. What book has really influenced you that might help me?
Oh, not Single Seat Wisdom? I can't use that one?
Yeah, can't use that or the good book. Another one that might have inspired you.
The Bible's out too.
Yeah.
Okay. I would say Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Kiyosaki. Love it. Love it. What's your most commonly used emoji, if any, when you text?
Emoji is a pointy finger up to something that I'm trying to get people to
Love it.
read or look
Gotcha. Nicknames growing up?
My dad called me Heinzie.
Okay.
I don't really know the background of that.
Okay.
Dom.
Got it. What do you have any hidden talent or superpower that nobody knows about?
Well, some people know about it, but I think the one that surprises a lot of people is I grew up playing bluegrass violin. So we had a traveling family band. We were called the Mini Manny Tykes.
Love it. Love it.
We would go play music.
That's awesome. Headline for your life.
Let's go with Man of God.
Love it. Chess, checkers, or Monopoly?
Let's go with Monopoly for sure.
Got it. Go to ice cream flavor.
Ice cream. Let's go Rocky Road.
Awesome. So there's a sandwich called the Heinzie Violini. Build that sandwich for me. What?
The Heinzie Violini?
Yeah. What's on that sandwich?
The sandwich, like that I eat, or just
yeah.
Like yeah. Let's go with sourdough.
Okay.
We'll go with maybe some roast beef and turkey and bacon.
Yeah, man candy. There you go. Love it.
Pepperoncinis.
We're definitely hanging out. Yeah, I love it. I love it. Favorite charity and or organization you like to give your time or money to?
Yeah, so Single Seat Mindset, that our company, we give all of our money to the Anna Schindler Foundation.
Okay.
It's a children's cancer nonprofit. They shelter families that are going through cancer treatments.
That's awesome, dude.
Place to live. It's
Gosh,
a Ronald
so
McDonald home style
organization.
But
yeah, we have like a Molly's house here in South Florida. It's kind of like the same thing, right? Where, we have a house, and my mom, when she was still alive, she would like house families that, their kid was going through a cancer operation or something. So yeah, I appreciate you doing that. So last question, we can elaborate a little bit on this one, but what's the best decade of music? 60s, 70s, 80s, or 90s?
60s, 70s, 80s, or 90s. Mine's going to be the 90s because I was kind of in my...
Yeah, man. No, 90s, 80s and 90s, they'll never die, because you listen to songs now, you get the hooks from the 80s and 90s. Yeah. But they'll never die, but they're back. Like a lot of that stuff's back right now. That's awesome. So, Dom, how can we find you, brother?
SingleSeatMindset.com.
That's an awesome URL, man.
Launchpad for everything.
That's awesome. And so I also am going to do, I know I'm going to do one book giveaway, but also my friend Dom is so generous that the first people go to singleseatmindset.com/podcast gift. They will get a copy, or the first 3 people that do that will get a copy of the Single Set Wisdom, correct?
Yeah, Single Seat Wisdom Volume.
Sorry about that. Single Seat Wisdom.
And there's no hook on that. The Single Seat Mindset business. We're giving everything away, so we don't keep any of the money. So part of that is buying books and giving those away too. That's
beautiful. And you know what? Anybody out? I'm going to buy 5 more. And anybody that puts in Heinzie, Heinzy, I'll know you've listened to this show. Anyone that puts in Heinzie, I'll buy you the Single Seat Mindset, the Wisdom book as well. And it'll be on my dime, and I'll send that out to you. And Dom, do me one last solid and leave us with one last knowledge nugget we can take with us, internalize, and take action on.
Yeah, I think very simply, because sometimes we have all this information, we just need to distill it down into something. Well, what do I do? Where do I start? And it's kind of, I'll lean back to the 5 minutes of freedom, or the 5 minutes of intentionality, whatever you want to call it. When you start your day, don't roll out of bed and start sprinting through your day. You're going to be lost. So spend 5 minutes, no kidding. Just if that's laying in bed, if that's getting on your knees on the side of your bed, if that's sitting in your favorite chair and sipping some coffee. Don't do anything. Don't look at your phone. Definitely don't stay off social media. Don't watch the news. It's all trash. Just sit there.
Right.
Pray, meditate, like just get your mind right as you step into your day. And it's only 5 minutes. If you don't have 5 minutes,
you got 5 minutes.
For
right.
15 or 30. I tried with 30. I tried with 15. I went down to 5 when I was starting out because I'm busy.
Right.
5 minutes just allows you to go, no, I don't need to do that. And you'll find that about 99% of the things that you're doing, you don't need to be doing. And those are bad habits.
Right.
So that helps you hone in. And if you do it every day, and maybe at the end of it, jot a little note down to yourself, write things down.
Love it.
Those 5 minutes those are gold.
I love it. And squad, we just had a fun conversation with, somebody that's did some badass stuff in life, man. And he didn't even know he wanted to do it. He never envisioned himself being a fighter pilot, but God subconsciously started planting little seeds in his brain, which eventually turned in. Luckily, he had a plastic brain. It was elastic that he allowed it to retweak, and he started gaining knowledge to become, a fighter pilot in the United States military. He reminds us about the left, right, left bounds, right bounds, that sometimes you have to break the rules. Sometimes you have to get it. As long as it's not the law, you have to break the rules to really get past. And if you have to go the gray area, that's fine. Just don't break a law or hurt somebody in the process. If you're doing it for the good intentions, then get out there and do it. He reminded us about grit. And I always talk about grit being a monotonous activity. It's going to happen. You have to go through it, whether you're trying to lose the weight, build muscles, become a fighter pilot. You have to have that grit to do that. And you're going to do that by Dom reminded us to keep reminding yourself of the bigger picture. There's the big picture out there. So you're inch by inch, it's a cinch. By the yard, it's hard, right, squad? We talk about, we have to have that grit that Dom talked about. I heard a lot of the plus equals minus with Dom, that he's going out and learning from people on the plus side. He's sitting here and he's trading secrets and stuff with me on the equal side. In the minus, I see Dom pulling people up and wanting to bring them to his level all the time. He reminded us that his success is dependent on how well he serves and works with others. And don't discount people that have the knowledge. If you have a salty dog out there that wants to pass it on to you, listen to them. But if you have somebody out there that Dom says that really is not serving you, they might be the green-eyed monster with envy. They see you doing stuff, they want to pull you down, discount them. Get them out of there. Dom will be remembered as someone that's a man of God. He's a family man. He loves his family. He loves his country. He loves what he does. He's going to probably slide across home plate, their baseball metaphor for you, Dom, that, bumped and bruised, but he knows he's going to serve the greater good at all the times. And he's doing it. What I'm seeing with Dom is he's doing it for the intention, not the attention. He's out there intending to get stuff, but he doesn't want to be, look at me, look at me. He hasn't said that once. And that's what I love about, working with guys like Dom. And lastly, he reminds us that, 5 minutes of intention, prayer, whatever it can be to be closest to your source. Mine and Dom's is God. But if yours is a different creator, that's fine, but get close to him, because that's where the goodness arrives. And the closer you can get to that, the more good you're going to take throughout the day, because that's what's going to be on your mind. And Dom, it's such a pleasure interviewing you. You level up your health, you level up your wealth. You've earned your varsity squad letter here at Time to Shine today. Thank you so much for coming on, brother. Absolutely love your guts.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate you having me.
You bet. Chat soon.